The sound of my body hitting the floor wasn't what haunted me. It was the silence that followed. I felt the cold floor against my palms before I fully registered what had happened. The sudden silence in the conference room was deafening. 30 pairs of eyes fixed on me, sprawled beside my overturned wheelchair. My expensive suit jacket had twisted awkwardly around my torso, and a thin trickle of blood ran down my wrist where I'd scraped it, breaking my fall. "So you ungrateful cripple," Marcus hissed, his voice carrying in the silence, his 6'2" frame looming over me, hands still extended from the push. "Did you really think you could go behind my back to HR and keep your job? 15 years I've put up with your special accommodations and attitude." I didn't move immediately. Something inside told me to memorize every detail of this moment. The shocked expressions of my colleagues, the triumphant sneer on Marcus's face, the way HR Director Patel stood frozen by the door, document folder clutched to her chest. This humiliation would fuel what came next. "Security will escort you out," Marcus continued, straightening his tie as if pushing a disabled man to the ground was just another task on his to-do list. "Your termination paperwork cites insubordination and creating a hostile work environment. Ironic, isn't it?" His laughter ignited something in me, not the explosive rage he wanted, but something colder and more focused. I'd spent 7 years as Senior Strategy Director at Westlake Industries, navigating the corporate battlefield from a wheelchair after the accident that took my mobility but sharpened my mind. I'd endured the whispers, the accidental scheduling of meetings in non-accessible rooms, and Marcus's escalating harassment since he became COO 2 years ago. "Someone help Richard up," a voice finally said. Andrea from legal, her face pale with shock. "Don't," I said quietly, surprising everyone. With practiced movements, I righted my wheelchair myself, leveraging years of upper body strength against gravity. I pulled myself back into the seat with as much dignity as I could muster, adjusting my glasses as I looked directly at Marcus. "You'll regret this decision," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside. Not a threat, a simple statement of fact. Marcus laughed again, louder this time, joined by his 2 VP sycophants. "What are you going to do? Sue us? Good luck proving anything when everyone here saw you being disruptive." He gestured around the room, where most eyes now looked away, unwilling to witness but equally unwilling to speak up. "Clear your desk in 15 minutes, he continued, "or security disposes of your things." As 2 guards appeared at the doorway, I caught sight of the boardroom across the hall where photographs of company leadership hung. Among them was a small plaque I'd received last quarter for bringing in the Henderson account, $50 million in new business that had single-handedly reversed our declining Q3 projections. The plaque that Marcus had taken credit for in the shareholder meeting while I sat in the back row. Rolling toward the door, I paused beside Patricia from finance. She'd been silently supportive over the years, quietly ensuring accessible pathways at company events, sharing insights over coffee. Now she couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "Don't be," I replied, surprising myself with my calmness. "But remember what you saw today." As security flanked me toward the elevator, I felt strangely light. 7 years of documented evidence sat encrypted on my personal server. Every accidental exclusion, every harassment incident, every financial manipulation I'd witnessed. Names, dates, witnesses. The board members who'd privately expressed concerns about Marcus's leadership. The investors who respected my strategic vision more than they'd ever admitted to Marcus. In my pocket, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "Heard what happened. Board member Hayes wants to meet. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I allowed myself a small smile as the elevator doors closed on my corporate life. Marcus thought he'd broken me. He didn't realize he'd just unleashed me. He had no idea what I would accomplish in the next 7 days. As the door to my apartment closed behind me, the silence felt oppressive. I wheeled to the window overlooking the city skyline, the same view I'd gazed at for 7 years while preparing strategy documents that made millions for Westlake Industries. My reflection stared back, disheveled suit, slight bruise forming on my cheek, eyes hardened with resolve. I allowed myself exactly 10 minutes of private vulnerability. 10 minutes to feel the humiliation of being thrown from my wheelchair like discarded trash. 10 minutes to acknowledge the betrayal of colleagues who'd watched in silence. When those 10 minutes ended, I dried my face, changed into a fresh shirt, and powered up my secure laptop. Operation Contingency had been my private name for the protocol I'd established 3 years ago when Marcus first showed signs of targeting me. Not paranoia, strategic foresight. Working from my home office, I sent 5 carefully crafted messages to key contacts who owed me professional favors or respected my work enough to meet discreetly. By midnight, 3 had already responded, including board member Hayes, who'd texted earlier. His message was brief. The incident is being discussed at higher levels. Bring everything you have. The next morning I met Hayes at a quiet cafe far from corporate headquarters. A distinguished man in his 60s with shrewd eyes, he'd always treated me with respect rather than pity. What Marcus did was indefensible, he said after hearing my account. But the board needs more than moral outrage to act. They need business reasons. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. Access codes to a secure server with 7 years of documented ethical violations, financial manipulations, and harassment incidents. Not just against me. 17 employees in total, 5 of whom left citing personal reasons after similar treatment. Hayes' eyebrows rose as he reviewed the first few pages. You've been collecting this all along. I'm a strategist, I replied simply. I anticipate moves 3 steps ahead. By day 3, I'd met with 2 more board members and Patricia from finance, who'd finally found her courage. The weight of guilt had compelled her to share internal documents showing how Marcus had deliberately buried my market expansion proposal that could have prevented our recent stock decline. He said, "Your disability would make investors nervous if you presented it," she confessed, unable to meet my eyes. I should have spoken up then. I wheeled closer, lowering my voice. You're speaking up now. That matters. On the 4th day, doubt crept in as I learned Marcus was rallying support, claiming I was orchestrating a revenge plot after being justifiably terminated for erratic behavior. 3 board members were firmly in his camp, including the chairman's brother-in-law. That evening, alone in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling and questioned everything. Was this justice or vengeance? Would I be any better than Marcus if I succeeded? For a moment I considered dropping it all, taking a settlement if offered, moving to another city, starting fresh. My phone rang, interrupting these thoughts. It was Christine, a former Westlake employee who'd left after experiencing Marcus's harassment firsthand. I heard what happened, she said. I'm ready to come forward with my story if it helps. Her call was followed by 4 more from former colleagues offering support or evidence. Their faith renewed my purpose. This wasn't just about me anymore. By day 5, the momentum had shifted perceptibly. An emergency board meeting had been scheduled for day 7 after 3 major investors expressed concerns about leadership stability following disturbing allegations that had somehow reached them. I wasn't just collecting allies. I was building a case for fundamental change in the company's culture. Each conversation revealed how many others had suffered under the toxic leadership that the board had tolerated for profit's sake. On the 6th day, I received an unexpected visitor. Andrea from legal appeared at my door, looking nervous but determined. Marcus asked me to offer you a settlement, she said once seated in my living room. 6 months' salary if you sign an NDA and drop whatever you're planning. I studied her carefully. And what do you think I should do? Her professional mask cracked slightly. Off the record, I think you should keep going. Things need to change. She hesitated, then added, the board meeting tomorrow has been extended to include a leadership review. Just thought you should know. After she left, I wheeled out onto my small balcony, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in golden hues. Tomorrow would determine everything, not just my professional vindication, but whether Westlake Industries would continue its toxic culture or begin a transformation. I thought of all the people who'd reached out, who'd found their voices after losing them to fear. I thought of future employees who might never know what it was like to be demeaned or excluded because of their differences. My phone buzzed with a text from Hayes. Be ready. Bring your A-game tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp. I sent a simple reply. I've been ready for 7 years. Day 7 dawned with a peculiar stillness. I dressed methodically in my finest suit, the charcoal grey one reserved for closing major accounts. Every detail mattered today. The platinum cufflinks my father had given me before he passed. The subtle cologne, the polished leather briefcase containing 7 years of meticulous documentation. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. at Westlake's executive floor. I arrived at 8:30, entering through the service entrance where an ally from facilities had ensured I could bypass the main lobby. The element of surprise was crucial. Mr. Hayes is waiting in the side conference room, whispered Diane, his executive assistant, who'd always treated me with respect. I found Hayes pacing by the window, tension visible in the set of his shoulders. "Marcus got wind of something," he said without preamble. "He's called in favors overnight. Chairman Goldstein is wavering." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "The evidence speaks for itself," I insisted, but doubt crept into my voice. Hayes paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's not just about evidence, Richard. It's about narrative. Marcus is painting you as bitter, unstable. He's claiming your documentation is fabricated, driven by resentment over performance issues." "That's absurd," I replied, a flash of anger breaking through my composed exterior. "My division outperformed targets by 23% last quarter." "I know that," Hayes said gently, "but 3 board members are buying his version because it's convenient, easier than admitting they enabled a toxic culture." This was the moment I'd feared. Politics trumping truth, power protecting itself. For a flicker of time, I considered walking away from it all. The fight suddenly seemed insurmountable, the system too entrenched to challenge. "Maybe I should take the settlement," I murmured, more to myself than Hayes. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Is that what this was about? Money?" His question struck like a physical blow. Was I willing to let everyone down who had risked speaking out? All those who might face similar treatment in the future? The thought of Marcus continuing his reign, believing himself untouchable, made my decision clear. "No," I said firmly. It was never about money. At 8:50, we received unexpected news. Christine and 2 other former employees had arrived in the lobby, requesting to address the board. Their timing couldn't have been more perfect or more courageous. As 9 a.m. approached, I wheeled toward the boardroom, Hayes walking beside me. Through the glass walls, I could see Marcus already seated, looking smug and confident. When our eyes met, his expression flickered with momentary surprise before settling back into arrogant dismissal. Just before entering, my phone buzzed with a message that nearly stopped my heart. It was from Patricia in finance. "Marcus deleted files from the server last night. Evidence gone." My carefully constructed case suddenly felt like a house of cards. Without the financial documentation, it would be my word against his. I paused, frozen in the hallway, the weight of potential failure crushing down. Hayes noticed my hesitation. "What's wrong?" I showed him the message, watching his face fall. "We don't have time to recover the files," he said. "We don't need to," I replied after a moment, a realization dawning. "I've been 3 steps ahead of Marcus for years. Everything is backed up on my private server, including access logs showing exactly when and what he deleted. His attempted cover-up only proves consciousness of guilt." Hayes's expression transformed into cautious hope. "You're sure?" "I didn't survive in corporate America by being unprepared," I said, straightening in my chair. "And I certainly didn't navigate life with a disability by leaving things to chance." As we entered the boardroom, conversation ceased abruptly. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward us, some hostile, some curious, a few supportive. Marcus stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced casualness. "This is a closed board meeting," he announced smoothly. "Mr. Harrington is no longer an employee and has no standing to be here." Chairman Goldstein cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Given the circumstances and allegations, the board has agreed to hear Mr. Harrington's perspective before proceeding further." Marcus's confident smile faltered just slightly, the first crack in his armor. He hadn't expected the board to grant me an audience. I positioned my wheelchair at the end of the table, directly opposite Marcus, and placed my laptop before me without speaking. The room remained tensely silent as I connected to the projector. "Before I begin," I said calmly, making eye contact with each board member, "I want to thank you for this opportunity. What I'm about to present isn't just about my termination. It's about the future of Westlake Industries and whether it will be built on integrity or intimidation." The first slide appeared on screen, a comprehensive timeline of documented harassment incidents, financial manipulations, and ethical breaches, and beside it, the server logs showing Marcus's desperate attempt to delete the evidence just 12 hours earlier. His face drained of color as he realized I'd outmaneuvered him one final time. "This is outrageous," Marcus sputtered, rising halfway from his seat. "These are fabricated records from a disgruntled ex-employee with a vendetta." I remained perfectly still, hands folded calmly. "The authenticity can be verified by any independent IT specialist. Each document has a blockchain-verified timestamp." Board member Chen leaned forward. I'm concerned about these financial discrepancies. You're suggesting the Henderson account projections were deliberately misrepresented. The boardroom door opened. Patricia entered with a leather portfolio, followed by Christine and two former employees. I can speak to that, Patricia said, voice gaining strength. I've brought Richard's original projections alongside the altered versions presented to shareholders. The discrepancy amounts to $12.4 million in overstated projections. Marcus slammed his hand down. This is a coordinated attack. None of these people should be permitted to hijack a board meeting. Chairman Goldstein adjusted his glasses. Given the seriousness of these allegations and the incident preceding Mr. Harrington's termination, I believe we should hear all relevant testimony. For the next half hour, evidence unfolded methodically. Christine detailed harassment she'd endured and how HR reports vanished. Others corroborated patterns of discrimination extending beyond my case. I watched board members' expressions shift from skepticism to unmistakable alarm. Even Marcus's allies exchanged troubled glances. When Patricia revealed how my division consistently outperformed, despite receiving fewer resources, Marcus attempted his final defense. Richard's technical skills aren't in question, he conceded, in that manipulative, reasonable tone. His interpersonal difficulties have created an untenable environment. His condition, unfortunately, makes him bitter and difficult. The room went silent. He'd shown his true face, playing the disability card explicitly. If I may, I said quietly, I'd like to play one final piece of evidence. An audio recording played through the speakers, Marcus's voice from 3 months earlier. I don't care what the numbers say. Richard's division is performing because I'm supervising it. No one's going to believe a man in a wheelchair pulled off the Henderson deal without help. The board doesn't want him as the face of this company. Reassign credit in the quarterly report. Marcus's face contorted. You recorded me. That's illegal. Actually, said Andrea from legal, New York is a one-party consent state. Richard had every right to document his work being misattributed. Marcus looked around for allies but found none. Even his supporters couldn't defend the naked discrimination in his own words. Goldstein cleared his throat. The board needs to deliberate privately. Please wait outside. The next 30 minutes stretched endlessly. I sat watching the wall clock while others spoke quietly. Patricia sat beside me in silence. Whatever happens, she finally said, you've already won. You've exposed the truth. I appreciated her sentiment, but knew true change required more than exposure. It needed structural reform. Hayes appeared. The board would like to speak with you. I returned to find Marcus gone. The atmosphere had shifted, tense, but with resolution rather than hostility. Goldstein spoke first. Mr. Harrington, the board has reached unanimous decisions. Your termination has been invalidated. Marcus Jameson has been removed from his position, and the board would like to offer you the position of Chief Executive Officer. The words hung in the air. Not vindication, elevation, not justice, transformation. We believe your strategic vision, ethical leadership, and understanding of the company's challenges make you uniquely qualified to guide Westlake forward. I allowed myself no visible reaction beyond a slight nod. Before I accept, I need to understand whether the board is truly committed to cultural transformation. The issues run deeper than one man's behavior. Goldstein looked surprised. What are you proposing? A complete overhaul of HR policies, an independent audit of compensation equity, an ethics committee with real enforcement power, and diversity initiatives that create genuine inclusion. The chairman received nods around the table. I believe we can work with those terms. Then I accept, I replied, extending my hand, with the understanding that my first act as CEO will be to meet with every employee who has experienced harassment to personally assure them that a new day has begun at Westlake. As we shook hands, I caught Hayes's slight approval. The journey from the floor of that conference room to the CEO's chair had taken exactly 7 days, but the real transformation was just beginning. The CEO's office at Westlake Industries offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a vista I'd admired from afar for years. Now, 1 week into my new role, I sat behind the imposing mahogany desk that once belonged to Marcus, reflecting on the seismic shift in my circumstances. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same wheelchair he'd seen as a weakness had carried me right into his former seat of power. My first directive had been the installation of state-of-the-art accessibility features throughout the building, not as a personal indulgence, but as a statement of values. Westlake would now champion dignity and inclusion, at every level. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. Patricia entered, carrying a stack of folders. "The Ethics Committee candidates are ready for your review," she said, now serving as my interim chief of staff. "And HR has drafted the new harassment policy framework." I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Any word from Marcus?" "His lawyer requested a private meeting with you tomorrow," she replied, hesitation in her voice. "The board thinks you should decline." I wheeled around the desk, looking out at the city below. 7 days ago, I'd been staring at this same skyline from my apartment, plotting my comeback. Now I faced another pivotal decision: how to handle my former tormentor. "Schedule the meeting," I said finally. "There's something I need to say to him face to face." The following morning, Marcus entered my office, a shadow of his former self. Gone was the swagger, the tailored suit replaced by something off the rack. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I assume you called me here to gloat," he said, remaining standing though I'd offered him a seat. "Actually, I called you here to thank you," I replied, watching confusion flash across his face. "Thank me? When you pushed me out of my wheelchair that day, you thought you were demonstrating your power. Instead, you revealed your fundamental weakness." I wheeled closer, holding his gaze. "You showed everyone that your leadership was built on intimidation rather than respect." He shifted uncomfortably. "If this meeting is just for philosophical lectures—" "It's not," I interrupted. "I know your lawyer is negotiating a severance package. I've approved it, with conditions." His eyebrows rose. "What conditions?" "First, you'll contribute to a new scholarship fund for employees with disabilities. Second, you'll undergo sensitivity training and document your learning journey publicly. Not to humiliate you, but to demonstrate genuine change is possible." "And if I refuse?" His old defiance flickered briefly. "Then nothing," I said simply. "You still get basic severance, but you miss the opportunity to rewrite your legacy, to transform your biggest mistake into something meaningful." For a moment, genuine surprise replaced the bitterness in his expression. He'd expected vindictiveness, the same quality he would have shown in my position. "I'll consider it," he said finally, moving toward the door. He paused, hand on the handle. "One question. When did you start planning this?" "After I pushed you." I smiled slightly. "I started preparing for contingencies the day you made your first dismissive comment about my condition 3 years ago. Not because I wanted your job, but because I recognized someone who would eventually abuse their power. People like you always reveal themselves eventually." After he left, I returned to the window, watching snowflakes begin to fall on the city. My phone buzzed with a message from Hayes. "Board approved all your proposed changes. Unanimous vote." That afternoon, I called my first company-wide town hall. As employees filed into the auditorium, I positioned my wheelchair on the stage, visible, unapologetic. "Many of you witnessed my lowest moment in this company," I began, sensing the collective discomfort, "when I was literally pushed down because I dared to speak up against harassment." I paused, looking across the sea of faces. "Today, I'm not asking you to forget that moment. I'm asking you to remember it, and to recognize that in any organization, how we treat our most vulnerable members reveals our true character." Rolling forward slightly, I continued, "Some see this wheelchair and assume limitation. I've always seen it as perspective, a daily reminder that obstacles can be navigated with ingenuity and persistence. That's the spirit I want to infuse into Westlake's culture moving forward." Over the next hour, I outlined the sweeping changes ahead: transparent promotion pathways, zero-tolerance harassment policies, mentorship programs for underrepresented groups, not as corporate window dressing, but as fundamental operating principles. The measure of our success will not just be financial performance, I concluded, but whether every person in this company can bring their full, authentic self to work without fear. Later that evening, alone in my office as darkness fell, I opened my desk drawer and removed the nameplates that had once marked my old cubicle, then my director's office, and now this executive suite. I ran my fingers over the embossed letters of my name. The journey from that conference room floor to this chair had taken just 7 days, but the real journey had begun years earlier, with the quiet, persistent refusal to be defined by others' perceptions. I placed the nameplates in a row, a physical timeline of resilience, not just my personal victory, but a testament to the power of dignified persistence in the face of injustice. The true strength had never been in my limbs, but in my unwavering belief that integrity ultimately outlasts intimidation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles for cultural transformation. But tonight, in the quiet of this office that symbolized so much more than corporate success, I allowed myself to feel the weight of the journey and the lightness of vindication. If this story has resonated with you in any way, I would be truly grateful if you'd consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel and activating notifications. Sometimes the most powerful changes begin with a single voice that refuses to be silenced.